I woke up extremely shocked by hearing intense voices of rockets being, launched out of Gaza.
This show is brought to you by IslamicMusicHub.com, Nasheed reviews, prayer maps, and more.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Stories from Gaza. This is a very special episode of Stories from Gaza because we're doing it as an interview, which is a lot more challenging for people in Gaza because of internet connection. But we have Shahd on the line. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
And you're currently in Egypt, is that correct?
Yes, I've left Gaza a few days ago. Thanks to God, I could manage to, come here into Cairo.
Just a few days. Wow, that must have been quite a
Yes.
journey.
Yeah, I actually experienced 150 days of the attack, and on the 150th, I could, manage to escape with my very immediate family members.
Amazing, amazing. So we'll talk about all of that. I just want to kind of start with some background about yourself. Just tell us sort of who you are and kind of your life before the war.
Okay, so I'm a freelance journalist. I'm also Arabic English teacher and translator. So I've achieved a lot as a student. I'm still in my fourth year of study. So before the attack, I was about to pursue my last year of English literature year, and I was about to graduate. I was about to gain my degree and start my life. So what happened is that unfortunately the attack broke out on the 7th of October, which was really very sudden, very shocking. It turned our lives upside down. Like only 2 months before the attack, I was in Spain. I was pursuing an Erasmus scholarship. The situation in Gaza has always been very challenging, but within this period of time, it's became very extreme because of what's going on. Because the strategies that Israel is doing right now in Gaza, and the strategies that they are following is so extreme, so challenging for Palestinians. They cut electricity, even though like before the attack. Palestinians in Gaza kind of managed to cope to all of the electricity struggle, the water struggle, like also like the medical shortages struggle. We kind of try to like somehow adapt and cope, and then suddenly we were surprised by this like really extreme attack where electricity is totally cut off, where like all of our hospitals, most of our hospitals are totally bombed, where like everything that we've been building up since the 2014 attack like has been demolished. Our lives is quite different right now. I mean, like before the attack, I used to be volunteering at so many organizations. I used to maintain very strong relationships with like so many organizations, and literally all of the organizations were bombed, and that's because all of the organizations were in Gaza City, and Gaza City right now is like mostly damaged, like entirely damaged. Everything there is ashes, unfortunately. Um, so actually, Gaza City was the most important city in the Strip because like it was considered as a capital for us, because you know that the Gaza Strip has been under lockdown since 2007. So we were not allowed to travel. We It was really hard to travel. I mean, like you would only be allowed to travel either for education purposes. So yeah, since 2007, Gazans has not been allowed to travel except for medical reasons or like education purposes. And even if you had like some scholarship opportunity, or like if you were sick or so on and on and needed a travel permit, most of the time you wouldn't be granted that right. But luckily for me, before the attack, a few months before the attack, I was able to travel. Then I returned only 2 months before the attack. So like the city of Gaza was the most prosperous city in the Strip, and destroying it means that means like almost everything in the entire Strip is destroyed, because everything in the Strip depends so much on Gaza City.
You mentioned the travel ban since 2017, but then you also said that you went over to Spain and some people were allowed to move. So just how could you kind of explain a bit more about how that worked? How easy was it to leave Gaza in that time?
Okay, so the band was not from 2017, but 27, like 2007. In 2007, there was like a lockdown imposed on the Gaza Strip. So yeah, it was really hard. What I did is that I applied for Erasmus scholarship at my university, and thanks to God, I was accepted. And then like because I applied for a permit, I was granted it because like I have education purposes, and I was so glad that I was granted that like a privilege, because I know many Palestinians who had scholarships but couldn't travel because they were not granted the permission. So after that, we had to go through like a cross border with Egypt through Rafah. And yeah, so well, when it comes to the crossing border, it's like two holes, like right at the south of the Gaza Strip there is Rafah city, and right at the south of Rafah there is the Egyptian Palestinian cross border. So it's like two holes, one is Palestinian, and the Palestinian holes takes you to like a small garden, and that garden takes you to the Egyptian hall. So everything went smoothly when I traveled through the Palestinian hall. Then I went through the Egyptian one, and in the Egyptian one, we had to spend a lot of time, a lot of hours. I remember that I spent from like 7 a.m. in the hall till 4 p.m. just waiting for our passports to be ready, and then to be signed. And after they were signed, we were let out of the Egyptian hall, and then we got on cars and went into Cairo, like went to Cairo.
So a very
That
long
was my first
process indeed.
experience.
Mhm.
Yes, and I felt like I'm an alien, coming from another planet, because it's my first time getting into a liberated country, seeing like how big the cities are. I mean, all I've seen in my life was only the Gaza Strip. I've never been allowed out of it. So I did understand what people mean when they say that Gaza is the largest wide open prison. Yes, so everything sounded so new to me. I've never seen the train stations, so till today I still struggle to get on trains. Yes, it's something like um I never saw in Gaza. So yeah, that makes me feel kind of sad, that I didn't experience things that are very normal to other people.
I actually
Yeah,
saw
there are a lot of things that
Motaz's story on Instagram, and he was saying it's the first time he's been to an international airport and seen civilian planes, and he called them
yes.
civilian planes because he's used to warplanes going over him.
Yeah, I was saying that where I'm living right now, there is the airport of Cairo is very close, and I see a lot of civilian planes coming out of it, and I'm like, oh gosh, all the planes I see in Gaza are war planes. So I'm like, these planes are beautiful. I want to see this in Gaza. I don't want to see, the war planes and like the rockets falling. And even though I hear the same voices when the planes are, getting, are like taking off and landing, but I'm like, I get scared, because I'm traumatized because of my experience in Gaza. But at the same time, I'm like, I wish that this voice would bring me happiness, that my country is developed and that we have an airport and such, like, and so on and on. But I'm like, every time I hear it, I just remember the suffering in Gaza. I remember the voices of the pumping and the hovering of the warplanes, the consistent hovering in Gaza. That was so annoying to us. Like, it was all the time, and sometimes we wouldn't be able to sleep during the night because of the strong sounds of the hovering of the warplanes in the sky.
A lot of these stories from Gaza that we're getting, you can hear warplanes in the background really loud. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty much in every single story that I have, so it must be quite constant. Yeah. I wanted to talk about when things changed for you guys, so kind of after October 7th, just to give us a bit of idea of kind of where you were when things started changing, when you heard about the news, and what your thoughts were at that time.
Yeah. So when I first went back from Spain, I was very unenthusiastic about my experience in Gaza. I was like, this is my final year. I'm gonna do more voluntary work. I'm gonna participate in more competitions. I'm, a very like normal university student life. So I was like, yeah, I applied for the Hattie Prize competition, and I was accepted to compete in this competition, So on the 7th of October, I was preparing myself for the first day of the competition. And then, like, I was sleeping, like, on a Friday, I was preparing everything. I was getting the clothes, and like, preparing everything. And on the 7th of October, I remember that I woke up extremely shocked by hearing intense voices of rockets being, launched out of Gaza. And I was like, I didn't know that they are being launched out of Gaza. I was like, gosh, Gaza is under attack, because was the normal scene that Gaza is like under attack. So when I heard all of the voices of like the rockets, and it was so intense, I was like, gosh, something terrible is going with Gaza right now. And so I ran to the corridor. I found my family members all are gathering there, and I was like, "What's it?" I mean, like, my mother was crying, she was in shock, everybody was in shock, and they're like, "We don't know what's happening, but something crazy is going on." So we tried to ask neighbors. Also, like, all neighbors were like in shock and not knowing what's going on. So at the time, the electricity was off, so we had to wait for the electricity. Like, I don't remember the exact number of hours we waited, so we know the news. But then we knew that Hamas could break like through some parts of the fence that is around Gaza. If they failed what they're doing, then we're gonna be really in extreme hot water, because without any reasons, without any provocations, Israel has always been targeting us, killing civilians in Gaza, um, killing children. We have been through 5 attacks before this current one, and we know very well how Israel can be very unmerciful and cruel towards us. So imagine if there is a reason.
So you're saying
Yeah,
that normally the attacks come in from the other side into Gaza, it happened the other way around, and there was a lot of
yeah,
panic going on that
yeah,
day. Talk about
yeah.
then, I guess the days after that, when we started hearing about a ground invasion of Gaza. What did you guys do then? Did you evacuate straight away, or what was the situation?
So, right after we heard the news of the first day, everything turned upside down in Gaza. It was extremely bombed. So, on the third day of the attack, we were in our apartment in the building that we were living in, and suddenly we heard noise and chaos, like, of our neighbors. And my brother went to see what's going on, and there was like neighbors were saying, please evacuate now, you have to evacuate now, there will be bombardment, our building is going to be bombed. So we have to evacuate. At that moment, we escaped our home and went to a relative home. So a few minutes after, the relative home was close to the building that we were living in. So a few minutes after we heard the bombing, I remember that my mother collapsed. She was like, she struggles with blood pressure. She felt very sad that the house was bombed, our memories, our things, a lot of things that are dear to us. So she thought that she's experiencing a huge loss right now. She was wondering about our future. So as for me, I was like, I mean, we were a few minutes away from death. This was very close call to death. And for me, at that moment, it was the closest call to death. So the other day, like the second day, the next day, we had to escape, and we went to our grandparents' house, which is right in the middle of Rafah. We have this custom, like, whenever there is an attack in Gaza, we evacuate to our grandparents' house, because we seek out shelter there, comfort, solidarity. It's like your family members, you feel safe with them. So we went there, and what was ironic is that we escaped an evacuation to another evacuation, because we went there, and only a few days after, same thing happened, like neighbors, guys, people like asking us to leave and evacuate. I remember that I was like sitting in the balcony with my uncle and like my cousins, And suddenly we saw so many Palestinians in Rafah are heading to the north of Rafah. So we were like, what's going on? We were so scared. My uncle tried to call his like neighbors, his friends, and they told him that we have to evacuate. So we evacuated immediately to a closed house there in the neighborhood that is considered to be safer at the moment. And when we were there, it was so ironic that in the attack of 2014, we evacuated to the same house. Imagine. Yeah. So we're like, when we went there, the neighbors would tell us, like, do you remember us? Because we haven't been in the neighborhood, like we haven't visited them for a long time. My uncle knows them, but like my mother and us don't know them very very well. So when we were chit chatting, they were like asking us whether we remember them or not, and they were like, you evacuated here years ago and there was bombing, and the mosque that was in the neighborhood was gonna be bombed, so you came here. And it was bombed at the moment in 2014.
Ri-
So that was.
So you were going from house to house. So you weren't intense at this point. It was just a case of moving from one house to the other.
Yes. Yeah. And what felt ironic about it is that like this is not a new experience that Palestinians in Gaza are going through. It's something we are accustomed to. During five Israeli attacks on Gaza, we've experienced this. So yeah, so then we went back to our grandparents' house. Things were kind of like settled down there. There was like everyday bombing, but not very close to our grandparents' house. There were moments where we evacuated, and there were moments where like things were settled down. Yeah, so till we started to see that people from the north are heading south, and they are declaring that the south is like safe area. So many people evacuated from the north to the south. So as for my family, Safis, most of the Safis live in the south. So many of them came to the south. They evacuated here. Some of them are now living in tents. Some of them are like residing with relative houses. So it's very chaotic right now. It's very dangerous. Like so many lives have been literally turned upside down. I know some of my friends and some of my family members who their financial situation before the attack was so good, and now during the attack is so bad, because this attack made the situation of all of Palestinians the same, because there is famine in the north, also in the south. Like so many the access that Palestinians have to food is not sufficient. So everyone is struggling with poverty, which I would say. Everyone is struggling with food, with water, with all of the basics of life. Is to keep protesting, to keep raising awareness, to do everything possible to tell about the stories of Palestinians. Because unfortunately, the media in the West, they are trying to manipulate the narratives. So every time you speak to your friends, to your community, every time you do a presentation about the Palestinian cause, and you show the intensity of the situation in Gaza and also in the West Bank and all around Palestine, and even the situation of Palestinians in the diaspora, that would contribute to the collective narrative of Palestine. That would contribute to the collective understanding of the Palestinian narrative all around the world. And for me personally, I think this is powerful, and in the long run would contribute to the success of the liberation journey of Palestinians, because the liberation of Palestine is not only meaningful to Muslims or Arabs or Palestinians. This is success of liberation all around the world, because that it means for me it's like a step towards the end of imperialism, because I think Western countries managed somehow to hide their control of so many developing countries, but in Palestine they cannot, because like what they're doing in Palestine is so extreme that it cannot be hidden. So if that ended, I believe it will contribute to the end of imperialism. That's why Israel as a Western project is so important to the US, because it means the ongoing colonization and the ongoing occupation of the entire globe. This is what globalization is about. Yeah, and the third thing that I really would recommend doing, which is keep donating. Yes, I mean, like Palestinians now, they need every little penny. They need everything that you'd contribute. The clothes, the aid, everything. I know there's a lot of challenges regarding getting aid into Gaza, but at least it would be there, and like at least even if a few amounts would be like let in into the strip, there's something to be shared with them, and maybe after a ceasefire would be announced, maybe they can get all of this into Gaza. But yes, Gaza needs you, and I think Israel right now is being supported by millions of dollars. So there's no problem if Palestine was as well supported, because it's the true side of the story. So, and it's like it's the oppressed, you know, it's the story of the oppressed and the one that really and truly needs the nations to live, not to kill.
Fantastic. It's been really good speaking to you,
Thank
Shahad.
you.
And I hope it's been really beneficial for a lot of people out there. Inshallah, I'll put a link to your GoFundMe in the description,
Thank you.
and just to encourage people to sort of share and, as you said, donate and really help Palestine as much as they can. Thank you very
Thank you
much
so
for talking
much.
to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
This recording was brought to you by IslamicMusicHub.com.